Well, hello everybody and welcome to Lunch Break Live. Real talk about obesity, food addiction, recovery, and what's really eating you. I'm Carrie De La Cruz. Happy to be with you again on this Thursday afternoon here in Southern California, where we have not seen a drop of rain in like 3 whole days, which means pretty much we're back to normal. So anyway, today has been kind of a crazy busy day around the office, which means that I had to decide whether I was gonna really have time to prepare for the show and be with you, or just be with you and not have time to prepare for the show. So I kind of did a little bit of both, but I'm telling you, I am sliding in under the wire here. So I've just been thinking about stuff as usual. It's what I do, mostly about, the whole concept of or understanding of addiction, and I realized, obviously it's very misunderstood, the whole subject of addiction. It's confusing to the person who finds themselves being imprisoned by their addiction. It's confusing to anyone that has to live with or interact with the addict. It's crazy, right? And I think that it's human nature to want to try to make sense out of things, and also to manage severity or kind of get a handle or a grip on things by determining if something is a big deal or not. Okay, so in other words, maybe we look at some addictions and we say, that's a really bad addiction. But you know what? That's okay. That's not bad. And I have been wondering if that makes a lot of sense. Is that a smart idea? Or are we kind of missing the point of addiction by focusing on the substance or the behavior to determine whether or not it's acceptable? Okay, so let me put my glasses on for this, because I did have time to make some notes, and I'll tell you what the motivation behind this is, okay? I was listening to the radio this morning, as I do every morning, and I have a hair in my eye, you guys, driving me. There it is, found it. Okay. Listening to the radio this morning, as I do every morning, and there are always ads for addiction. There's addiction hotline, call for help, don't be afraid to ask for help, that kind of thing. And one of the taglines says, untreated addiction will end in prison or death. Okay, that's what they say. It ends in prison or death. And then they encourage people who are addicted to drugs or alcohol to call for help. So in other words, they're talking about addiction, and they're saying it always ends in prison or death, and the addiction they're talking about is alcohol or drugs. Okay? And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of a simple way to look at it, but it made me think, does all addiction end in prison or death? What do you guys think? Does everything end in prison or death? Okay. And Laura, by the way, I'm looking down here as I let you guys think, or encourage you to think, and thank you very much for sharing the video. Okay. And everyone else who is here, thank you for being here. Okay. So I want you to walk with me on this. Now, again, this is like my idea. This is not anything that necessarily, how do I say this? It's like, I don't think you could go to school and read a book about this and say, yes, we all agree this is true, this is fact, and you get a degree in it. No, these are just my musings, my ponderings, because as someone who is living in recovery for food addiction and obesity, I think about the imprisonment of addiction because I choose to be free of that imprisonment every day through sober food abstinent recovery, okay? So when I see others who are imprisoned by it, it makes me think and say, okay, is that fair? Like, should they have to be imprisoned by that? Do they even know they're imprisoned by that? Do they know there's hope to be freed? I think about all this stuff all the time, and then I think, is it harder for them because society views their struggle as not being as significant as maybe someone else's struggle? So that's what I'm getting at here is like, this may not be, this is just my opinion. There you go. My opinion. Of course, that's what my show is pretty much always about. But, I just want to see what you guys think. Okay. Food addiction. Okay. So we're talking about, does all addiction end in prison or death? Okay. Food addiction. I think you could say we certainly physically are imprisoned by our bodies and limitations. So if we're dealing with obesity, right? That's an imprisonment. I think a lot of you will agree, certainly I'm raising my hand here, that I was in prison. When I was morbidly obese, I couldn't do things. I didn't want to do things. So I was a prisoner in my own body and in my own mind, and I didn't want to leave the house or be in pictures and things like that. Okay. So I'm going to say definitely food addiction, especially where obesity is prevalent, definitely can lead to certain physical limitations, okay, and imprisonment by your body. But even a food addiction where you're not obese, right? Let's talk about anorexia or bulimia. You are imprisoned by your body, by what you put it through, whether it's starving it, abstaining from food, whether it's binging and then purging maybe, whether it's just binging and not purging, unhealthy eating, disordered eating, okay? I think that's imprisonment of the body. But and then we look at death, okay? Comorbidities, obviously. So if you're obese, right, you've got heart failure, high cholesterol, diabetes, blood clots, things like that. But you know what? Anorexics also die from being underweight. Their hearts fail as well. People who are bulimic, boy, their systems go through hell. They have, obviously throat problems and stomach problems and all kinds of disorders. So I think it's fair to say that food addiction can definitely end in death, right? But let's also talk about death of dreams, death of relationships, death of self-worth, or a life worth living. I kind of think that food addiction, disordered eating, problems with food can lead to the death of dreams or the death of kind of the belief that life is worth living. I think so. Food addiction, so in other words, it does fit the criteria, but it's seemingly never addressed on these commercials. It's just not. It's like when they talk about addiction help, getting help for your addiction, they talk about drugs and alcohol, drugs and alcohol, drugs and alcohol, and they never talk about food. I don't understand that. Okay. No wonder it's so hard. It was so hard for me to figure out that there was such a thing as food addiction and that I might have a problem with it because they never talk about it anywhere, right? Very few people do. Certainly Tenny McCarty does. Shades of Hope. Thank you, God. Thank God for Tenny McCarty. She does. And it's out there, but it's harder to find. My point is it's not as prevalent. I'm not saying no one talks about it. I'm just saying we don't hear about it very often. What about other addictions like smoking, shopping, sex, or gambling? Do those end in prison or death? Well, maybe you go to prison like for credit card fraud or for stealing money from others to fund your addiction to those things, financial addictions especially. What about sex? Does that end in death or prison? Well, maybe for sex, if you're really addicted to it, you're dealing in crime like, prostitution. Maybe you're hiring a prostitute or maybe you are a prostitute or whatever, and maybe that's fueling other addictions or whatever. So you're certainly crossing the line of legality at that point. And again, I think it comes back to a death to yourself as well. So even if it doesn't result in a physical death, it results in a death of meaningful, lasting relationships. Self-worth and value, again, death of dreams, okay? Smoking, obvious death, lung cancer, lung disease, death, okay? How about being imprisoned by the behavior? Think about this, the cravings, the habit, the need to smoke. Well, that's definitely a form of imprisonment. So even though cigarettes are perfectly legal, I think it's fair to say that addiction can lead and will lead to prison and death. You're imprisoned by your addiction, and I think you die to yourself. I just do. I think we all do. Okay, so again, I'm going to say that I think the commercial is true. Untreated addiction ends in prison or death. Now, here's where it got kind of interesting for me, okay? There are so many other addictions out there. I went on this site to see if I could just find like a whole bunch of random things that were classified or categorized as addictions. Are you ready for this? Okay. These are the ones that, okay, and I want you to think about this for a second. A lot of these people seem to think are okay or acceptable or not big deals. But if we go back to what I'm originally asking, is one addiction better than another? Or, do they all lead to prison and death? Okay, so that's kind of my premise for today's show. Let's talk about some of these things that qualify or are categorized as addictions. Ready? All right. Did you know you can be addicted to approval? I did. I am. I am working on living in recovery from that. But let me tell you, I'm addicted to approval. Adrenaline. Ever met an adrenaline junkie? Oh, well, let me think. What's the difference between an adrenaline junkie and a drug junkie? Well, one is socially acceptable because, wow, adrenaline junkies, they got to get their fix somehow. But look at the crazy stuff they do. That's amazing. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but what the heck? If they want to do it, whatever floats your boat. Would we say the same thing about a drug junkie that we do an adrenaline junkie? How about this? Action. Addicted to action. So in other words, to the action addict, inaction is death. I can't sit still. I've got to keep moving. I've got to be doing something. I've got to be accomplishing something. You see a lot of people like this. If I'm not doing something, I'll go crazy. I'll go out of my mind. Addicted to action. I've got to leave the house. I've got to be moving. I can't sit still. Right? Addicted to action. Anime. Right? Japanese anime. Yes. There's an actual addiction to anime. How about this one? Attention. Hi. No, I'm not trying to get your attention. Or maybe I am because, yes, I am addicted to attention. Again, working on living in recovery from that as part of my balanced life. Okay, because it's not healthy. If that is leading me around like, a bull by a ring in the nose, going attention, 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 okay, that need, and I can't breathe or live without it, that addiction, wouldn't you say that affects the quality of my life? Wouldn't you say that sort of can lead to death to myself as the healthiest version of me that I could possibly be? Wouldn't you think that someone could be imprisoned by that need to get attention at all costs? Okay, here's some more. I'll just run through the list. Bodybuilding. We've seen it, right? Caffeine. Oh, no big deal. Come on, there's a Starbucks on every corner. It's not a big deal. Hey, you will never get better coffee than you do at an AA meeting. There you go, right? But it's okay. It's okay because, at least you're not drinking. Really? How many cups of coffee are you pouring into your gut every day? Caffeine. Or maybe it's in the Monsters or the energy drinks, the Red Bulls, right? Red Bull gives you wings. Oh, that's okay then. How about this? Collecting coins and other valuable things. Well, if you're addicted to it, you could go broke. You could go bankrupt trying to fund your habit. Junk collecting, hoarding, right? We've seen that. It's an addiction to something. Something's going on there. Okay, so here's my question. If you're a junk collector, and you just pick up junk, or you hoard crazy things like old newspapers or cans and things like that, right? Versus someone who collects coins and stamps. Does that make it better? So in other words, is the substance the thing that's going to determine if it's a problem or not? So if it passes inspection and it's quality and, that costs more, so that's, not really a problem. That's just someone who's truly a collector. A collector of what? Coins or trash? You're still a collector, and if you can't stop doing it, don't you think that's an addiction worth focusing on? Kleptomania, laziness. People can be addicted to laziness. I was absolutely addicted to laziness. Not in all things, but certainly physical laziness, because, man, I'm hard working on the job, right? But I was certainly addicted to laziness where it came to my health. I just was. Love, addicted to love. Drama, again, raising my hand. Endorphins, fame. Relationships. Some people are addicted to relationships. They're serial daters. When the relationship gets old, the novelty wears off. They don't get that, fresh high that they got from falling in love. Then they swap that in on a new one. So, internet. We know people can be addicted to the internet. I hope you're addicted to my show. That's a good addiction. I'm kidding. But seriously, gaming, right? You see people just plugged in 24/7 to the gaming. I mean, they're living their entire lives through gaming. Let's see here. Exercising. Yeah, it's on the list. Excessive exercising. It's on the list. But how many people look at it and say, oh, but that's good. That's a healthy addiction. I think we need to, again, go back to the idea of what is the definition of an addiction. Are we focusing on the substance or the behavior to qualify and determine whether it's acceptable or not? Or are we looking at the mania, the compulsion, the obsession, the alteration of living a healthy, balanced life, because it's being skewed so heavily to one direction or another, to one behavior or one substance over another. Let's see here. Job, workaholic. Yep, absolutely, that was me. Because, oh boy, I got my goodies, I got my jollies there. Because, hey, I'm good at it. I get a paycheck. They pay me to do good, right? I'm really effective. Yeah, addicted to work. Run away, run away, run away. Because if I'm not good at, maybe being a mom, I could be good at work. Okay, I'm addicted to that. Sure, right? Not anymore, by the way. I figured out that my self-worth is more than just my job. Let's see here. Misery. Some people are addicted to misery. Do you know any people like that? I do. Overachieving. Again, darn it, so many on this list. Overachieving. It's not just enough to achieve, got to overachieve. Phobias. Some people are addicted to phobias. They're like hypochondriacal. They have every phobia on the planet. Don't send them to WebMD because they'll have it all. Let's see, pornography, obviously. People can be, and a lot of people argue with this. Oh, well, who's it hurting? Who's it harming? What's the big deal? I mean, that's like a victimless whatever, because the women want to do it and the guys want to consume it, or the girls want to consume it and the guys want it, whatever. You know what, though? Again, if we're coming back to what the real definition of an addiction is, then we've got to look at what that's doing to the quality of the person's life, the people who are involved in the creation of or the consumption of the pornography, don't we? And this isn't a value thing or a moral thing or a judgment like that. It's really looking at just certainly the impact that it has on the person and those around them. People pleasing and perfectionism. Okay, I have to tell you, I misspelled perfectionism when I was typing really quickly, and I went back and I corrected it. I did. All right. Religion. Some people can be addicted to religion, right? And don't misquote me on that one, because there's a fine line here, okay? There is, believing in something, and then there is being consumed by it or being ruled by it to the point where you're not really living the life that you profess to be the life that, let's say, God wants you to live, right? Okay. Risky behaviors. We know people like that. Self-help books. Addicted to self-help books. How many people do I know that just read and consume every book on the planet, and yet they don't seem to do anything in the books? They just read the books as if reading the books will fix the problem. Self-mutilation. We see that on display out there, right? A lot. Sleeping, addicted to sleeping. Speed, not the drug. I'm talking like get in the car, put the pedal to the metal, right? Faster. I'm addicted to speed. I feel the need for speed, right? Oh, well, that's good. That's okay. That's why we have race car drivers, because, they're addicted to adrenaline and risky behavior and speed, but that's okay. Is it? If that is the driving force, if you'll excuse the pun, behind their life, and it's all encompassing, and their life is imbalanced because of that need, that craving, to feed the need for speed. I don't know if that's such a great thing. Steroids, we've seen that, bodybuilders. Texting while driving. Yes, it is on the list. Texting while driving. You may be one of those people who cannot put your phone down and must text while driving. Dangerous. Therapy. Some people are addicted to therapy. They just show up and keep going. As long as I'm in therapy, it's a good thing. Not if you're not getting anything out of it. You got to get something out of it, right? Don't just go to go. I mean, go, but don't just go and not get anything out of it. You got to actually do something. Therapy is about doing something and not just going to therapy. Travel, addicted to travel, right? Got to get away, obviously, but wherever you go, there you are. That's a problem. Toxic relationships, underachieving. Yes, people are addicted to underachieving, right? Because they're afraid if they succeed, maybe they'll have to keep succeeding. I don't know. Violence. There are some people who are addicted to violence. So my point is, in that very long, laundry list, and it's really even still only a partial list. They're just some of the ones I pulled out. There are many, many more. But how many of us turn a blind eye to some of the addictions because we claim they aren't hurting anybody, or they aren't illegal, so live and let live, or they're productive. They lead to something good for everybody, so yay. Are harmless. Well, I'm going to argue with that last one. Harmless? Not hurting anybody? Really? I think they're hurting the addict, and I think they're hurting the people in the addict's life. Because let's say I'm a workaholic and I'm married and I'm a mom. Well, then I'm not home for my family because I'm engaging in my addiction at work. So my family is suffering. They are being harmed by and guess what? I am being harmed by that need, that bottomless pit of need that I have that never gets fulfilled. And I am absolutely compelled and impelled to work. And then I work harder and more and longer hours to try and get that high, to try and feel good about me. That's a compulsion, and that's not harmless to me. You know, the same, and I talk about a lot of these things. Let's see, drama, you know. Yeah, drama hurts people. It hurts the people that are the focus of the drama, and it hurts the drama queen because they're in a constant elevated state of, right? And everything has to be elevated to the dramatic level in order for them to even feel anything about it. Because normalcy doesn't really exist. It's always cranked up. It's just like any drug, right? When you start using, you have to keep using more and more and more to get the same feeling. It's the same thing with any of these things. Approval, action, endorphins, relationships, all of that misery. You got to keep compounding and putting more and more and more on. I don't think addiction is harmless on any level. Whatever the substance, whatever the behavior, it is not harmless. It does harm. And that's why I think we need to stop focusing on the substance to determine if it's legal or illegal, and stop focusing on the behavior to decide if it's productive or not, or if it benefits us. No, it hurts. Addiction hurts. It kills. It kills our spirits and it kills our hearts. And it just kills relationships. It is deadly. Addiction of every sort on every level, has a negative effect. I don't think we should be so willing to just sit back and tolerate it as if it's not a big deal. I'm not saying to judge someone. I'm not saying to put somebody down. But I am saying we need to wake up and at least acknowledge the fact that addiction is more than just drugs or alcohol or gambling or even food. It's much more than that. We can be addicted to the feelings, the emotions, and the behaviors as well. And I think focusing on the substance or behavior is missing the point of addiction. Deciding whether an addiction is significant based upon legality or acceptability is a disservice to anyone who suffers from behaviors and substances. And when we do these things, we are disconnecting from life and not living on life's terms. When we are actively, we're active in our addiction, we are disconnecting ourselves from life, or we are trying to cut ourselves off from the stuff that we don't want to deal with. Okay? Here's what I know. I am not judging anyone. No way. If you don't agree with me, I'm not judging you. I'm not going to make you an addict if you aren't one. Okay, that's up to us to decide if we have a problem. And we know if we have a problem. If we obsess about stuff and we know it's a problem, it's a problem. What happens if we expand our definition of addiction? So if we step away from that, what I call limited definition of addiction, and we expand it to this behavior, this feeling, right? This unhealthiness, this obsession, this sickness. What happens? Well, I don't know about you, but when I do that, when I realize that many of those other things under the umbrella matter and don't make me feel good about myself, chasing, people-pleasing, perfectionism, overachieving, attention, chasing, all of those things, if I look at those and say, you know what? Those are addictions and I want to live in recovery from those things. I don't want to be ruled by those things. I don't want those things to have power over my life. When I do that, that opens up the possibilities for a much more serene life in recovery, because I can address and face those things and look at those things and say, yes, those things are problems. They cause me pain and they cause other people in my life pain. And I don't like it. I don't feel alone. The minute I open, it's like opening the doors and letting the sunlight in. I don't feel alone anymore because I know other people are suffering too. And when we know others are suffering, that is where compassion can comfortably live, don't you think? And empathy, of course. I also believe that I can get help and deserve help and can be helped and will be helped. That's wonderful. That's powerful. To believe that there's hope and help. Well, once I open the door and recognize that all of those things that people said were harmless or didn't matter or were good, but I didn't feel good about them, now that I know I can get help, that's a good thing. Also, I'm not judged. I'm not judged by you, and I'm most certainly not judged by myself, because I am my own worst judge, aren't I? I'm never going to end up well on that scale where I judge me. So I can stop judging myself and start choosing recovery. Once I address the fact that, you know what, addiction is addiction. It's not the substance, it's not the behavior. One is no better or worse than the other if it negatively affects our ability to live a serene life in recovery and one of healthy balance. That's what I think. I think, is one addiction better than another? I think addiction is addiction. So the substance shouldn't determine the severity. So when we sit here and we say, you know what, it's a healthy addiction. Oh, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Not if it harms the person who is enduring that compulsion, and not if it harms the people in their lives. And I guarantee you, when we're talking about doing these things to excess, it does harm us. It is deadly, and it does imprison us. So that's kind of the point of my... Wow, that was unprepared. Okay, now my hair's in my face and it's driving me nuts. Yeah, I have an addiction to bangs. You know, that they have to be just right or it drives me nuts, but I'm working on that. Anyway, I'm hoping that this made a little bit of sense. What I want to do is I want to open the dialogue, open an opportunity to have a dialogue, to have a discussion, and to begin becoming more accepting of ourselves and others. To open those doors, to allow the hope to come streaming in, to begin to accept help, because we recognize we don't have to suffer alone. We don't have to suffer with these things. We can look at them and say, they're not healthy. And you know what? I don't have to live like that. And I can choose to live in recovery from those things, even if they aren't drugs or alcohol or any of the other commonly accepted addictions. If I have a problem, I have a problem, and it's okay, and I can get help, and I know I'm going to get support from Carrie. That's the one thing I hope you guys know from this show, from my Lunch Break Lives. You will always, always get loving support from me, because I've lived it. I'm living it every single day, doing my best. Some days are better than others, but all in all, I really am living the joy of recovery that I really wish for all of you. So I'm going to let you go because, gosh, Lord Almighty, one hair in my face driving me nuts. I'm going to go pull it out right now. I'm going to go pluck it. Anyway, I'll let you guys go. And you know what? What do you want to talk about tomorrow? Get your questions together. Give me something to talk about. Don't make me come up with this stuff all the time. Tell me what you want to talk about, and maybe we'll do a Q&A tomorrow. Your input, my output, okay? So take care, you guys. I want to leave you all and remind you to have courage, seek peace, embrace joy, and above all, live a healthy recovery. Remember, you can't stop feeding what's eating you if you don't know what's eating you. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.